What's going on, everyone? I'm Wayne Grayson, and you are watching Equipment World. This week on The Dirt, we've got a pretty special episode because we're going to devote the entire thing to talking about Caterpillar's latest dozers, the new next generation dozer platform. It's also a special episode because we're going to be joined by two guests instead of just one, and those are Sam Meeker and Joel Fritts. Sam and Joel are both product application specialists for dozers at Caterpillar, and I asked them to come and speak to us today about the latest dozer models from Cat. But in the course of our conversation, we touch on not just the new D1, D2, and D3, D5, D6, and D7 models, but we also talk about the new naming convention that Caterpillar is using for those new models, because Cat has basically dropped the letters from model name suffixes from all of its new machines, and that has meant a pretty major shift in the way that we think about the latest Cat dozers, not just from a name perspective, but also from a performance perspective, and really how we understand the lineup as a whole. So let's go ahead and get into the conversation with Joel and Sam, breaking down the Cat dozer lineup, breaking down what's new with these latest models, and really trying to understand what is driving the development, not only of the new models, but also in kind of the restructuring of the Cat dozer lineup. Let's get into it. Joel, Sam, thank you guys so much for joining me today. How are you guys doing today?
Morning, Wayne. Doing great. Good to be here.
Nice and warm outside, nice and air conditioned in here, Wayne. So happy to be on the phone with you for a little while.
Awesome. So glad that you guys could both join us today. The first thing that I wanted to talk with you guys about was model names. Over the last few years, I think back in 2017 is really when this change kind of started applying to the lineup at large. But Cat has been removing letters from the model name suffixes, and in the last year or so, that impact has come to the dozer lineup. Could you guys talk a little bit about that change in particular? I know it has caused a little bit of, at least a little bit, and I know that you guys probably anticipated this too, but a little bit of customer kind of confusion, a few questions, especially like on our Facebook page in terms of like why this is happening. So from you guys' perspective, what is the thinking behind this naming convention change? And I'm also interested to hear a little bit about why there was kind of like a year or two gap between that change kind of hitting the rest of the Cat lineup and then coming to because initially we were told it wasn't going to immediately come to dozers. So I'd like to hear a little bit about that kind of specific detail as well.
For the model names, in terms of the timing for some of the other equipment as well as dozers, I believe that maybe excavators were the first ones to come out. And then I knew wheel loaders kind of followed in there as well too. I believe we announced maybe next, and then scrapers, motor graders, and some of the other lineups were in there as well too. I think trucks was early also as well too. So yeah, we for the most part trying to make sure we got the model names right. We went through a lot of different iterations for how we would describe the different size classes of the machines, how they relate to each other, and but also at the same time kind of wanting to maintain a bit of legacy that we've always had with the Cat dozer lineup. So one of my favorite stories about the dozer lineup here is one of the problems that we were trying to solve was we called it the 3D6 problem. We had a D6T, we had a D6N, and a D6K. And so, three different models, three very different size classes, price ranges, value, propositions on each of those machines, and customers would just call them a D6. And, that's kind of what they were known in the industry as. So we really kind of needed to straighten that out a little bit and make it a little bit easier for a customer to help pick the right D6 and pick the right machine for his job. So that was kind of one of them. So we kind of started in the middle of the line there, and then we decided, all right, we're going to work our way up. Start with the D6. Next larger tractor is going to be D7, D8, D9, D10, D11, obviously, and then we just worked our way down from the D6 as well too. So D5, 4, 3, 2, and 1, and really getting those models just lined up in terms of their size, their productivity, weight and horsepower are typically the ways that we would line those up as well too. Now, in terms of timing, a lot of those tractors, we wanted to make sure that they came in with a new product introduction. We didn't want to, if we didn't have to, we didn't want to just change the name without providing an NPI, as we call it, a new product introduction with a new product, a next gen, feature set. If we could do that, that would really make the change really worthwhile. So the fall of 2018 was when we announced the D6 and D6 XE. And so those, that D6 size class became new then. The fall of 2019 was the D5. Earlier this year, we announced the D7 as well, which will be shipping that tractor next year. So, kind of getting that line up there as well too. Now, when it comes to the D4, that was a tractor that we did change the name of without doing an NPI. So we did just change the D6K2. We literally pulled the old sticker off and put the new sticker on and changed that into the D4 with no new product introduction on that tractor. And one of the key reasons for that was because we wanted to align with Mr. Fritts and the small tractor side, the D1, D2, D3, and make sure that we were kind of aligned with them and not having a D6K2 in the middle of the lineup there. So the big tractors on the mining side of it, 9, 10, 11, I believe the 11 was announced maybe in 2019. So we're getting some of those tractors that are coming in and being announced with a new product introduction. So that's definitely helping out. But I'll let Joel talk a little bit about the D1, D2, D3 and some of the strategy behind that.
Sam did a great job of covering it. Just to summarize real quickly, Wayne, why did we do it? We had too many model numbers, the D6 specifically. And one thing we really do at Caterpillar, we listen to our customers, and our customers were telling us we needed to try to simplify our nomenclature somehow. So we came up with this solution. We thought it was the best. It preserved our brand equity. There's a lot of heritage in the D nomenclature. That was our number one objective. So that's how we wound up with this very simple model nomenclature, which basically meant from a D6 down, we moved the numbers down a little bit concerned there. But in the long run, after we get through this adjustment period, I think it's going to be a lot simpler for everyone to understand what size cat dozer they need to do their work.
And a bit of a follow-up here on the it kind of sounds like, while this might be kind of like Joel just said, but basically a little bit of a rough period here and kind of cleaning everything up, but eventually everything will be a lot easier for customers to kind of understand, especially when they're coming at the lineup, maybe looking to they're used to kind of like a certain segment of the lineup, but maybe they're looking to get into like a smaller or a larger tractor for the first time and doing that research and figuring out what kind of best fits their needs. But what has it been like? It sounds kind of like, especially with that D6 and trying to clean up some of that stuff, it sounds like you guys were kind of like actually working with a pretty complex puzzle here and coming up with these new model names. So what has been the experience? What has the experience been like of kind of trying to clean this up, put this new puzzle together and figure all this stuff out from you guys' perspective?
It's, the D6 especially, and all three sizes of that have been, they've been a bit of a challenge, to be honest with you. Over the years, D6, D6R, D6T, D6M, D6N, the D6K obviously as well too. And then you start to add in some of the modifiers in there as well too. So there, previously was an XL, an XW, and an LGP. And then, of course, you've got your different blade choices. Sometimes they put VPAT on the end of that if it was a VPAT. So you could really end up with an alphabet soup of characters to try to describe a tractor. So it's definitely been entertaining to try to really break that down into what is the most important portion of that nomenclature, to help the customer, again, get the right size machine and compare things relatively between each other. So we kept the LGP, moniker for dozers. So for example, you can buy a D3, which would be the standard, or a D3 LGP, which would be the LGP. Same with the D4, D5, D6, D7, the standard gauge or the LGP gauge. Now on the D6 size in particular, we do have two LGP gauges. We have a narrower LGP gauge, kind of that old XW mid gauge, which is the 30-inch track size. And then we also have the 36-inch track size, which would be your traditional LGP with the wider tracks on it as well. So definitely, having that in there and trying to describe the gauge or therefore not describe the gauge if we don't need to. That's kind of what drove us to drop the XL and XW monikers there as well too. Now, when you start talking about some of the other suffixes that happen to be on the back of these, the D6, of course, being the base power shift tractor, 4-speed power shift, and then the D6 XE being the electric drive tractor. We did want to separate those two out just a little bit. So in the new Cat nomenclature lineup, whether it's a tractor, whether it's an excavator, a wheel loader, just the base model would be your standard, your standard powertrain offering or your standard feature set offering. XE, in the Dozer world, the XE denotes that it has a premium powertrain or a higher value powertrain, such as the electric drive. I know that the wheel loaders have done that for some of their CVT drives as well too, when they get into that. In fact, I think even Backhoes has an XE model that they've got in there that's a kind of a premium model as well. So on the other side of that, if there is a GC model that we offer, which we do not in North America right now offer a GC model in dozers, but excavators, wheel loaders do have a GC model that kind of a bit more. More of a value-oriented model that's got kind of just the right features for a contractor, that needs those. And so they do offer that as a GC, as that suffix as well too. So that's kind of your three options. You've got your GC, you've got your standard, which would be your D6, and then you've got your XE, which would be your premium powertrain. Kind of denoting a little bit of the differences in features there. So and just to throw one out as well too, I think it is kind of interesting. Once we get ingrained into our nomenclature, mindset, because of history and where we've been, we think that sometimes we think that things are a little out of whack if it's a little bit different, but I will say this, it's kind of interesting when, I talk to a lot of customers and at the trade shows and obviously on customer job sites and there's a lot of folks that are like, you know what, that actually looks a little bit easier than we had it before. They're like, I really didn't know the difference between a D6K and a D6N and a D6T and a D5. I didn't know how all those went together, so it really is a lot simpler for customers, if they're, especially kind of if they're new a little bit to the dozer world. And even folks that do a little bit of renting as well, right? It really kind of helps you get the right machine if you're in a rental situation. All right, I'm looking for a D4. Well, it's a little too big. All right, boom, right back down to the D3. Or nope, jump up to the D5 if it's not big enough. So it really does kind of help in terms of sizing and understanding the differences when you're in a rental situation as well too. So I think in the end it's clearing itself up pretty quickly and pretty easily. There's not a lot of magic to it. D1 to D11, bigger number, bigger dozer.
Now, one of the things you mentioned was kind of like that rebrand of the D6K2 to just the new D4, essentially. And just for a little bit more clarity, and I think it nicely kind of illustrates how this new nomenclature change is kind of cleaning things up a little bit. But obviously, the new D5 replaces the former D6N. So how does that D4, the former D6K2, how does that kind of compare to the new D5? Like what are we looking at in terms of kind of like a foundational difference between those two tractors?
We made the change in the factory, I think maybe a month ago, something like that. So it's been rebranded to that D4 now. And like I said, it was the only one that didn't have an NPI, a new product introduction associated with it. But we just wanted the nomenclature to be clear. We didn't want to have something in there that was going to be, D1, D2, D3, D6K2, D5, D6, D7, right? So we wanted to just make sure we kept it clean in there. So we did just make that change in the factory about a month ago. So the new tractors all say D4 on them. Has the exact same size, weight, horsepower, feature set as the previous D6K2. No change no change in terms of that. And basically, when you look at those tractors, well, let's even start from the Joel. Let's do just basic weight and horsepower from the D1 on up. Once you start with those three, just rough numbers.
The numbers on the smaller models, the D1, which replaced the D3K, our weight and horsepower remained the same. It's still an 80 horsepower machine. The D2 is still the 92 horsepower machine. The D3 replaces the footprint of the D5K. So bottom line, we kept the machine the same size, same power range, because that was what our customers were telling they wanted to do the job with.
So we've and the D1 is what, about 17,000 pounds?
Right around 17,300, I think, something like that.
And then the D2 goes up to 18, 19 in there?
Correct.
About 21 or 22 for the D3?
That's correct.
Yep. So then when you jump up into the D4, now you're going to 130 horse, 30,000 pounds. The D5 being 170 horse, 1,000 pounds roughly. The D6 then 215 horse, 50,000 pounds. D7, 265 and 65,000 pounds, right? So you kind of see, Wayne, how we just kind of keep working our way up there in terms of that weight and horsepower, and it gets us, a nice straight line as we're working through that small and medium lineup.
All right, so I want to move on to this next-gen platform of dozers, and it kind of really goes hand in hand with the model name changes, the next-gen dozer platform, and kind of some of the changes that you're bringing to these new dozers. Could you guys give me an overview of the next-gen dozer platform? What are really kind of the design details that are driving the development of these new machines? What are kind of like the marquee features that all of these new next-gen dozers have?
One of the things, the customers really told us they liked was the size of our machines and the features that we already had. We've spent a lot of time providing the customers with new grade control solutions. And so we are building on grade control and making it easier. And I focus on easier. That was one of our big objectives, is try to make it easier for the customers to use the great technology that we have available in these machines. You can put all this technology on a machine, but if the operator cannot take advantage of it and actually use it, it really serves no value to the customer in getting their work done. So in doing that, we came up with some easier user interface, new display, for example, that's consistent across all of our tractor lines models. Makes it easier to use these new features like we have for grade control, like slope assist, grade with 2D, grade with 3D. Just makes it easier for that operator to understand and use. Then along with the larger touchscreen displays, we've got some other features on the small dozer specifically that we went with like turbine type pre-cleaner, externally mounted reversing fan, hinged radiator grill.
A lot of the same features in the next gen D5, D6, D7 are very similar to that. We did a lot in terms of that technology, like Joel said, building on the basic platforms and then kind of working our way up. So all of the dozers in the lineup have some basic technology, such as stable blade, slope indicate, helping to make smooth grades, and then also giving the operator some basic slope information to be able to, kind of cut or grade that to a slope. Not automatic, as standard, but just some basic slope information there. So in terms of that type of commonality, it's really cool that we see that from the D1 all the way up to the D7. Now then, building on that, as Joel had mentioned, the 2D technology, so cat grade with 2D, what we've called slope assist in the past. Basic technology, again, basic automatics that help to drive that dozer blade to a target slope so that it, matches that target slope, and you're basically grading to kind of a flat pad type of slope. So really good for house pads, ditch work, any basic type of work, even just spreading topsoil in a stockpile, or on a particular fill site where you're trying to maintain positive drainage. Slope assist or cat grade with 2D really helps to do that work a little bit faster, a little bit more accurately, and especially for some newer operators. And then of course jumping up into the 3D, that's some pretty common type of interface as well too. We use the exact same interface between small and medium dozers and even some of the large dozers now as well too. So for the 3D. Now, when we jump into some of the other features that are common with next gen, obviously operator station cabs have been super important for us. And so, redesigning that operator experience in the cab with the brand new cab, Joel was able to jump ahead of us a couple years, and that latest K2 series had a really nice cab with airflow coming out of the B posts right back at that operator. Great visibility all around, and so we took a page out of their playbook when we redesigned the D5, D6, D7 next gen cabs for optimum visibility. Sliding armrest to be able to slide those controls right where you need them. Grade display and your machine display out front. Nicely located, so it's really in the sight line of the operator when they're doing their visibility and their work with their blade. Obviously, passing through that grade control display to make sure that they're on the target they're looking to be on. So, and then we kind of like to just maintain some good commonality in terms of just basic features, serviceability, right? Left-hand serviceability, right-hand serviceability on those dozers. Being able to get in there on one side and quickly check your oil, check your coolers, make sure there's nothing plugged up, clean things off a little bit, but good serviceability in there. Joel mentioned reversing fans. That's an option on every dozer now to have a nice reversing fan to give you some really good self-cleaning capability of that machine if you're out working in maybe some higher debris environment, doing a little bit of that land clearing or whatnot. So reversing fans, things like that as well too. So lots of really common features in the next gen lineup between from the D1 all the way up to the D7.
Yeah, and Sam, just to add to that, that was really one of the things we've really focused on for our customers is if you're on a Cat dozer trying to make the controls and all the interface very similar. So when you're jumping off one machine to another, there's some consistency there. Makes it easier to operate the machine at the end of the day.
Now, guys, this might be a bit of a redundant question, kind of depending on how you answer it and how much of these next gen kind of features kind of come into play here. But I'm interested to hear from you guys what you guys feel is the Cat dozer lineup's kind of biggest advantage in comparison to the rest of the market for dozers. Where do you guys feel like you are ahead of everybody else? What are you guys offering the customer that you guys feel like really nobody else in the market can kind of currently match just yet? What are your biggest advantages?
I'd like to say it's the combination of everything. Wouldn't you agree, Joel? I mean, it's that productive machine, super comfortable, right? Easy to operate with all of the technology and the features that really help to make that a rock star for that customer and really help them make more money. I'd like to think it's really the combination of everything. The machines are super productive. We do production studies to compare against our competitors, and we like to feel like we have one of the most productive machines out there, if not the most. And the other thing we focus on too is efficiency as well, right? We want to make sure that tractor is doing the job, but it's doing it at the highest efficiency, the least fuel consumption, and even beyond that, some of the least expensive maintenance and repair costs out there as well too. So to me, it's kind of that, it's the combination of the productivity, the efficiency, that awesome technology that's in there as well too. I've been in and run, some of the other guys with the technology, with the grade control and the screens and whatnot. And I'll tell you what, you cannot beat that Cat Grade with 3D screen. Large 10-inch color touch screen, super easy to navigate. Even simple features that we've added in there, like being able to do some of your own basic designs right on the screen. I've done some videos and stuff on how to do that, but just going in and creating an alignment and a cross section, or even just creating a flat pad, on the screen. I do that a lot of times when we're out, doing demos with customers in field, or doing technology days for dealers. I'll just go in there really quickly and simply just make a quick design on the screen, and boom, within a couple of minutes, I've got a design set up. And so that's the type of thing that we like to talk about that you could do with that Cat Grade display, that I think is kind of above and beyond some of the other guys that are out there. What else do you think, Joel?
Yeah, to build on what you said, Sam, about the technology, grade control technology is probably one of the really hot subjects out there in the construction industry today with machines. And that is something I think we've got a clear advantage over the competition, other choices out there in the dozer marketplace. And what I'm talking about, you can take one of our basic machines. Let's say if you ordered a machine with our ARO or attachment ready option, and that includes slope assist, which allows an operator basically to do onboard reference system type grade work to, get water to run from point A to point B, just basic grading. But you can take that same machine, and as you see you need to add more technology, let's say go to the off-board reference system like a 2D laser system, you can take that same machine and just basically plug and play the components into it, and you're off and running, and then build right on up to 3D GPS or 3D total station. So I think that's a huge advantage for a customer looking at looking at a small dozer that we can offer them, is the ability to scale up their grade control technology with the machine they start with.
All right, well, Joel, I want to kind of move on to some of the specific new models, and I wanted to start with the smaller tractors, since they're really kind of like the latest kind of introduction in comparison to the rest of the lineup. So the new D1, the new D2, and the new D3. Could you give us an overview of each of those models, and also kind of talk a little bit about the models that they replace, since we were talking about nomenclature changes earlier. So the new D1, the new D2, the new D3, what those models replace, and what is new on each of those models.
The new D1, Wayne, replaced the D3K. We listened to the customers, and the customers said it had plenty of power, and the weight was right, the footprint was right. So we kept all that the same. So basically all the great feature value that you had on the former D3K, you've got on the D1. Even though the number may be smaller, that has nothing to do with the value or the power that the machine has to do its work. It's still an 80 horsepower machine, weighs in right around high 17,000 up to 18,500, something like that. Then your replacement for the next size up, the D4K2, was the D2. And it's a 92 horsepower machine, weighs right in there around 18,500 to up to 19,500. Same blade capacities as the former model. It's somewhere between 1.9 up to 2.5 cubic yards. Very consistent componentry, technology, feature values, the things the customer would use to do that work. And then the D3, which replaced the D5K2, and that's probably our most popular size class machine we have in the smaller dozer lineup. Customers just really like that size machine. Here again, we kept it the same. We didn't change things. We gave them what they wanted, added onto it with some simpler to use technology. Still 104 horsepower machine, weighs right around 20,000 all the way up to 22,000 pounds, depending on how you configure it. So bottom line, to wrap up those three models, we kept the horsepower, the weight, the features we already had the same, and just added on to it with some easier to use technology, specifically in the grade control area.
Now, you mentioned earlier when you were discussing the D1 that was kind of especially in the D1 mulcher configuration, that was kind of a unique machine, being able to drop that mulcher head and doze with it. The versatility of that smaller size. Could you talk a little bit? The D1 is also kind of unique in that this is the D2 and the D3. There's been previous models of those machines further back in Cat's history, but the D1 is also unique in the sense that it's the first time that there has been a D1 model name in general. So talk a little bit about the uniqueness of that machine, of its size and power, and that mulcher configuration.
Wayne, you're right. We did have a D2 earlier on in our history when Caterpillar first started with track type tractors, dozers. But the D1 is a new model for Caterpillar. And this new model with the mulcher configuration is a unique configurated machine. I want to be sure to make that point. You can't take just a standard D1 and put a mulcher on it. This machine has a larger hydraulic system, a little bit more horsepower for the mulcher application. So compared to what we started out with the D2 years ago back in the 40s, this machine weighs similarly, but it has more horsepower. And you'll hear people talk about dozers, weight to horsepower ratio. And the weight is what allows the machine to actually do the work or push the load, but the horsepower is what allows the machine to do the work at a certain rate. So the more horsepower there is, the more faster the customer can get the job done. So looking back, kind of looking at the same weight machine, but the machine has more horsepower, so we can do that work faster cycle times, and then also be more nimble and easier to operate. So those are some of the key differences probably between the former model and the newer models. As far as the mulcher itself, that was a great combination. We found a lot of customers are taking advantage of that, especially people in the land development business. You know, before you move any dirt, you've got to go in there and clear the material, the brush, the trees off. And that's just a great tool to have that you can do with a mulcher. And then you can take that mulcher head off if you want to later on in the machine's life, or at any time, really. It takes about 4 hours, and put a dozer blade on it and use it as a dozing machine.
And Joel, since it's on that smaller end of the dozer lineup, what this kind of reminds me of is that we're starting to see kind of like a new kind of category, or at least a new tinkering with the possibility of a new category of machine, but really as like these compact track loaders that are getting larger and larger. You guys have started to introduce more these smart attachments for the new D3 series, CTLs and skid steers. And so you see the CTLs getting larger, hydraulic flows getting bigger and bigger on the auxiliary side of those machines, and they're kind of starting to inch further into maybe some of that dozer territory in terms of slap a dozer blade onto this thing and you've got a similar kind of like 2-in-1 type of machine. How do you think that, you mentioned earlier too, kind of like the importance of that horsepower, the importance of that kind of like efficiency and that productivity rate. How do you think, it sounds like the D1 is kind of like a really good example of how a dozer can really kind of hold its own against some of these smaller machine categories in terms of, especially like land clearing, but then also, it's still like a purpose-built dozer. Talk a little bit about that.
Well, at Cat, we're very fortunate. We've got a very wide portfolio of machines for a customer to use. And so the CTLs definitely have their place in that they are a very versatile machine, use a lot of different attachments, like you mentioned, the smart tools, smart attachments, and versatility, maneuverability, affordability on a smaller budget is very appealing. With us looking into some of these smaller dozers using some specific attachments, we were looking to maybe take advantage of the machine's stability like you have on a dozer, and also weight, and able to maybe work in a little bit tougher applications and yet still use the dozer for that particular application where you need it. So we're going to continue to see those smaller compact machines like the CTL and MTL work with these attachments. And we'll probably continue to investigate what we can do on some of maybe the little bit bigger dozers.
All right, now Sam, I'd like to move on to the new larger end of the lineup. We've talked about earlier. We talked about the D5. Actually, now we have the D4, the D5, the D6, and the D7. Talk a little bit about each of those machines. I guess not the D4 since we already addressed that. But the D5, the D6, and the D7. Talk about those machines, the machines they replace, and kind of what you feel like are the biggest new features and improvements for those models.
Just to kind of reiterate on that D4, as we mentioned, it is just a nomenclature change. So it, same features, same size as the D6K2, same productivity, same efficiency. Great little finish tractor. Do a little bit of heavy dozing with it as well too. Just a nice little machine to be able to do a variety of work with. So the new D4. Now, when we jump up into the D5 replaces the D6N. And just a little jaunt back into history for a minute. Let's take this nomenclature backwards a little bit because I think it's kind of funny to know that, right? So the D5 replacing the D6N. The D6N replaced the D6M, as in Mary. The D6M replaced the D5H when it first became a high drive. So back in the old days, it was the 4H, 5H, 6H, 7H. And so now we're kind of going back to that same 4, 5, 6, 7 type of nomenclature in there. So I find that always find that kind of interesting to look back into history and see that. But so D5 replacing the D6N. We did add just a little bit of weight and a little bit of horsepower to that tractor. So it's up to 170 net and up to about 42,000 pounds when we look at the LGP, 39 some for the XL dozer. Now, in terms of marquee features on this tractor, one of the key things that we put on this guy was we did introduce our SU blade. So it's a hard nose mounted, nice looking SU blade. It's got the right weight, the right balance of that tractor to really provide some good performance, in straight dozing, but also in particular, I've run this tractor in steering applications, where you're really trying to pioneer out or pull material out of a pile or cut into sweeping backfill type of work. And it's a little steering monster with that SU blade on it. So real happy with that in terms of that. So obviously still have the VPAP blade for both the XL and the standard gauge as well as the LGP gauge as well. So when you take a look at this tractor, there was a lot of things that we did to this guy in terms of performance and productivity. So on the powertrain side of it, we added in obviously that little bit of horsepower in there. We also added our full auto shift into this tractor as well. So just set your speed with the dial. You've got 30 speed ranges that you can choose, 1.8 or 2.5 or 0.7, whatever you want to do, and the tractor's going to automatically shift and get you in the right speed to do that. It does have a lockup clutch torque converter in the transmission, so it will auto shift and it'll automatically lock and unlock that torque converter to try to get you the most efficient and the most productive power as it can. So we added some interesting things into that transmission and into the controls to try to provide a little bit more confidence, a little bit more controllability in several areas. So one of the things that we talk about is when you're dozing up and down a hill, we do have a hill hold feature that will maintain the commanded speed on that dozer. So if you are kind of outrunning your torque converter, and it won't roll down the hill on you, it's going to go ahead and modulate the brakes as it needs to control that speed. Same thing in terms of controllability on a hill. When you throw it into neutral or throw it into reverse, it very smoothly comes to a stop and very smoothly reverses back up there for you or forward either way. So really good in terms of controls there as well too. Similar to the D6XE, we have a decel pedal response and control very similar to the D6XE. You can take that decel pedal, and obviously it slows the tractor down, but now it will take the tractor all the way to the stop. So if you take that decel pedal all the way down to the bottom, it's going to slowly and very controllably modulate that tractor all the way down to a stop. So really nice in terms of that, especially if you're kind of working your way up to maybe a manhole cover, or trying to spread a little bit of material into a trench or something like that. You can get really good controllability with that decel pedal, just using that all the way down to the stop. So in terms of steering, we did put a bit more steering power in this tractor as well too. We upped the pressure, the flow in the pump, and the motor as well, to give us a little bit more steering performance on this tractor also. And a lot of times you want to be able to turn a little bit tighter, and most customers are familiar with pushing down on that decel pedal to slow the tractor down and tighten that tractor up. And that's exactly what this tractor does as well too. When you push on that decel pedal while you're in a turn, it's going to go ahead and downshift for you and get you into a tighter turning situation. It really gets that turning radius down to very, very tight turning radius. It almost stops that inside track in terms of steering radiuses. So several things in terms of the powertrain controls that we added into this tractor as well too. So we also mentioned a little bit about the technology. So in addition to our standard stable blade slope assist, the optional cat grade with 2D or slope assist rather, or sorry, stable blade slope indicate are the standard. Slope assist, 2D slope assist, comes with our ARO. And so that's kind of that basic 2D. Of course, the 3D grade control, but we added a couple of new things in this tractor as well too. Blade load monitor and traction control. So we use several of the sensors in the tractor, including the GPS, to determine how fast the tractor is moving. And of course, all the sensors in the tractor to determine how much material we're pushing. So what we can do then is we can display that information to the operator in the form of a blade load monitor. And so it's kind of just a graph, in a yellow bar on a green, yellow, red graph that lets you know how much material you're pushing in relation to the power capability of the tractor and also the traction capability of the machine. So kind of gives the operator a nice little visual indication of how close they're getting to that slip area, right, where they may be powering out or they might be slipping as well too. So we kind of give them a little bit of an indication as to how much that tractor is pushing, and we call that blade load monitor. So gives them a little interactive feedback, lets them know how hard they're pushing and how much material they have on the blade. Now at the same time too, we also work that in with our traction control system. And so what traction control will do is if you get up to that point where you're about to break tracks, it will go ahead and detorque the transmission just a little bit to allow you to regain control of that load and not break tracks. The worst thing you can do is break traction. When you break traction, now you've lost your momentum and you've lost your, you've certainly lost that pushing capability of the tractor and the load on the front of the blade. So what we'll do with traction control is we'll detorque just a little bit when it gets to that, right to that slip limit. And try and maintain traction on that tractor and help you push a little bit more with that tractor. So those were a couple of the brand new technology features, obviously, that come with that next gen D5 as well too. So the D6 and D6 XE program, huge program. We 35-year redesign on that tractor. Again, we launched it late 2018. Shipping all 2019, of course, this year as well too. Customers love that tractor, whether it's a D6 or an XE. The features in that machine are just amazing. Brand new redesign from the ground up in terms of frames, roller frames, cab, engine, transmission, all of the electronics and hydraulic systems of that tractor. And really, really an amazing machine when it comes to productivity, performance, and the operator experience in that tractor, right? The comfort and the controllability they have with that machine. So, and then of course the XE powertrain in there, just can't say enough good about that. It's great to throw a customer in that tractor, let him demo it, let him try it for, even just jumping in it for 15 minutes. And they get out of that machine, they say, I just can't believe the power that has. And it's that power and the efficiency are kind of the two main features of that XE transmission that really give us, really provide value for customers. It's just an awesome machine. So fast forward a little bit as we move into the D7, right? So the D7 tractor we showed at Con Expo, launched it at Con Expo there, and we're coming to market with that tractor next year. So great machine though as well too. Obviously some things that have changed in that. We went from the low drive undercarriage to a high drive undercarriage. Listen to our customers tell us, how much they love high drive Cat tractors, and lots of reasons why, right? The impact and the shock load, the comfort, the ability to put that undercarriage right where we need to get the maximum amount of performance out of that dozer in terms of cutting and carrying capability. More horsepower, more weight on that tractor. Of course, the next gen cab. D7E had a great cab. It really did. So the next gen cab kind of builds on that. Again, great visibility all around, comfortable in there, controls right where you need them, and commonality, as we were talking a little bit earlier, commonality with the other next-gen dozers, and even a bit of commonality with the small tractors as well, too. So it's easy for a customer to jump out of one and jump into another one and be comfortable and productive. So, and then, of course, the next-gen D7 is going to come with that same feature set that we have in the D5s and D6s in terms of technology, as well. So, grade 2D, 3D, traction control, blade load monitor, all of that stuff in there. So, that's kind of our medium next gen lineup from the D4 up to the D7.
Hey, and Joel, there was one other thing that I wanted to talk about on the D1, D2, and D3 as well, that Sam kind of reminded me of, talking about commonality. But there's a new engine inside the new these new smaller dozers. Same horsepower ratings and everything, but you guys have put in the new C3.6 engine. Could you talk a little bit about that move to that engine and really the commonality that it brings these dozers, not just between themselves, but also between them and really a huge chunk of the new BCP machine lineup?
Yes, we went with the new C3.6 primarily to meet our emission requirement for Europe with stage 5. So that was one of the primary reasons we did that, and it still met all the requirements for Tier 4 in other areas of the world. So that was one of the primary reasons there. We went with that. Great emission package, very consistent type emission solutions as we have with a lot of the larger machines. So the nice thing about having, common engines is it's more economical for the customer to maintain, service, and whatnot, and manage. And I know sometimes there is some concern with the size of an engine changing displacement. And I'd just like to address that a little bit. It's very similar to the automobile industry or a truck industry. Today, with the control systems that we have on both engines and transmissions, the two can communicate together so much better than what we had in the former days, where you had a manual transmission and you had to depend on engine torque, let's say, for an example, to change with the transient loads the machine or the vehicle may see. But today, with the control systems we have, that becomes less critical. So we're able to use a little bit smaller displacement engines, get the horsepower we need from it very economically, primarily with some great machining and new designs that allow that machine to operate for a lot longer period of time than what some of these former engines used to. And so it's just a better overall combination when we go to these newer high-tech engine and transmission solutions. So that's kind of the background of the reason we did it, and then also the benefits that come along with it for the customer. With all these dozers that we're talking about today, we have got just probably the best fuel economy out there in the marketplace on our dozers, and that's attributed to the work that's been done with the engine designs and the fuel control systems that we have on the machines, along with the emission solutions. So with that, coupled with features like we have standard on our machines, eco mode, that really allows the customer to get a lot better fuel economy. And the neat thing about, for example, our eco mode that we have on our dozers, we don't just decrease the engine RPM to improve fuel economy. A lot of manufacturers do that to get improved fuel economy. And when you do that, it sacrifices your performance. But on Cat dozers, we don't sacrifice any performance at all when you're running in eco mode. All you do is basically decrease the engine RPM, and the transmission, because it is a smart transmission, so to speak, it actually can speed up the track pump and motors to get you the speed that the customer desires to stay constant. And that's what you want to focus on when you're doing grading work, especially finished grading work.
All right, guys. Well, thank you so much for joining us today. This was such an interesting discussion. I had a lot of fun talking to you guys, not only just about the new models, but also about kind of like the history of this lineup. It's definitely a big moment for the Cat Dozer lineup, kind of in the overall history of this lineup for several reasons, which we went through today. So thank you both again for your time today. Really appreciate it. And yeah, thanks so much.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. Really appreciate it, and great to talk to you again. Looking forward to doing it again sometime.
Yeah, thanks, Wayne. This has been a great, real treat, a lot of fun, and as Sam mentioned, let's do it again.
So that's going to wrap it up for this episode of The Dirt. We really hope you enjoyed this conversation between myself, Joel, and Sam. Again, Joel and Sam are both product application specialists at Caterpillar for the Dozer lineup. So in terms of finding experts on Cat Dozers, you really can't do much better than these two guys. They know their stuff, and it's always a pleasure talking to them. If you like this video and found any of the information in it useful with your next machine purchase or rental, please do us a favor and hit the like button below. It really helps our channel out. And if you want more videos on the latest in construction equipment, gear, trucks, and more, subscribe to our channel and turn on notifications so you're getting up-to-the-minute alerts whenever we drop a new video. Thank you guys so much again for watching. We really appreciate your time, and we will see you next time.